The First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
Good afternoon, folks, or perhaps I should say good evening, and welcome in. Hopefully, you were able to log on or at least watch us earlier this afternoon. Meteorologist Robert Spetto was here shortly after lunchtime. Got on, was tracking this pretty strong wave of storms that's made its way right across the Jacksonville metro area between about 1 and 3 o'clock, after which most of those storms pushed offshore. We have had a few stronger storms around, especially down in Flagler County. We had one severe thunderstorm warning there, and also out towards Valdosta. But all of the severe warnings, the only two that we had, of course, they have since expired, and we've continued to have just a pretty steady, moderate rainfall in downtown Jackson. I know we got the jumbo shrimp across the street here, and I've seen some fans meandering around, but still just kind of a nasty, soggy Sunday here around the Jacksonville area. And then further off to the north, that's really where the heaviest and strongest thunderstorms are at right now. And this is exactly what Robert and I were talking about earlier this afternoon when we were streaming here on First Coast News Plus, that southeast Georgia was really going to be the hotbed for further intensification of thunderstorms and the best chance to see more heavy rainfall as we got later on here into the rest of your Sunday evening. And that's exactly what we're witnessing out there now. So National Weather Service just put out a flood advisory for portions of Glenn County, Brantley County, and also Pierce and northern Ware. That runs until 5:45. So you can kind of see that light green rectangular box up there across Pierce and Brantley County. That is that flood advisory. So that's where the heaviest rainfall is currently falling. So whether you live in Waycross or just north of Patterson there in far northern Pierce County, some very strong storms. Wind gusts within these could be anywhere from about 35 to 40 miles per hour. A lot of lightning embedded within that thunderstorm as well, just to the north of Patterson there in Pierce County. Similar story really across most of Brantley. Again, just to the east of Route 1 there, moving to the east of Waycross. Pretty strong line of storms. So rainfall rates upwards of 2 to 3 inches per hour. These are some locations that already got a lot of rain yesterday. Really did kind of depend where you were at. We had some localized higher amounts of 3 to 4 inches yesterday, but I think we can pretty much generalize it that most folks saw at least 1 to 2 inches of rain yesterday. We're going to add on another at least 1 to 2, if not upwards of 3 inches, especially where that flood advisory was at. So you factor in yesterday's rainfall and the rain today. I mean, some folks are going to wrap up the weekend with anywhere from 4 to upwards of even 6 inches of rain by the time, this evening wraps up. So very soggy weekend here across the First Coast. But as I mentioned, southeast Georgia, and especially up there in Ware, Pierce, and Brantley County, that is where the heaviest rain is falling, and currently those strongest thunderstorms are at. Now, just off to the east a little bit, over towards Brunswick and Glenn County, or coastal Glenn County, still some heavy rain falling there as well. Brunswick, St. Simon's Island saw some heavy rain yesterday, upwards of 2 to 3 inches. Further back to the west and southwest, this was a very strong line of storms initially as it was over I-75. Thankfully, those cloud tops have kind of flattened out a little bit. The rain itself has become more stratiform, really just meaning the height of the storm is not nearly as high. It's kind of just starting to spread out. And you can kind of see that on reflectivity. So that's in Clinch County and northern Columbia. That's going to be moving into Charlton, Baker County, and eventually western Nassau and western Camden over the next couple of hours. So not moving as quickly as some of the other storms are, but still just a nice moderate to heavy rainfall going to be moving in there. Again, closer to the Jacksonville area. I talked about just the steady rain that we've seen here now for the past several hours. You'll notice most of that beginning to shift further to the east and offshore. So the west side, you might still have some light rain and drizzle out there, but overall, our rain chances through the rest of this evening or for at least the next couple of hours are beginning to wane. So some good news if you're planning on getting some takeout and heading out to grab some dinner here shortly. The rain will begin to subside, especially west of I-95 for Duval County. Still going to have some rain around out towards the beaches, Mayport, up towards Fort Caroline, East Arlington, even south side. You're going to have some rain around for at least another probably 30 to 45 minutes. But I would say by about 6 o'clock, or if not shortly thereafter, most of the rain around the Jackson Metro and Duval County is going to push offshore. Further southward from there, Palatka and Putnam County, an isolated storm beginning to fizzle out. And then there was that one severe warning storm, probably about an hour or so ago. It was over Palm Coast and Marineland, but you'll notice that's now moved offshore as well. So things beginning to dry out just a hair in southern St. Johns, Putnam, and Flagler County. So still a few isolated showers, but overall the storm risk has come down substantially for our folks who live a little bit further south. So there was just kind of a quick radar tour of what we're seeing out there. So southeast Georgia, still seeing the strongest thunderstorms here this evening. This is just a quick look at the radar estimated rainfall totals from the past 24 hours. So you notice a lot of purple popping up there. Glenn County, one of those locations, right out along I-10 in Baker County, Glen St. Mary, Sanderson, McClenny even. You know, we've seen rain totals today upwards of about 2 inches. Out towards the beaches, so eastern Duval County, let's just say, and southern Nassau County, or southeastern Nassau County at least. Again, similar story, upwards of about 2 inches in most locations. And it's going to vary depending on where exactly you were at, if you were in a stronger part of the thunderstorm or a heavier downpour. But give or take, a half inch here or there, most places they're picking up 2 inches here today. So as I mentioned, by the time we wrap up this evening, a lot of folks getting upwards of 4, 5, 6 inches of rain even. But perhaps the good news with some of this, I know it felt nice when I went outside earlier as the storms were kind of working their way in. Temperatures have cooled down a lot. Most of us currently sitting in the mid to upper 70s. Now, a little bit warmer further off to the southwest, down towards Gainesville and far southwestern Putnam County, where they haven't seen as much coverage of thunderstorms. Temperatures still in the mid 80s. But overall, this is a far, cry from the temperatures we have seen over the past week, where at this time, in the 5 o'clock hour, we've seen temperatures 98, 99. Thankfully, not going to be the case here for your Sunday night tonight. Now, for the rest of this evening, we're still going to watch primarily up, northern or southeast Georgia counties, northern Ware, Pierce, Brantley, Glenn, Camden, for the strongest thunderstorms. But pretty much by sunset, most of the storm threat and risk will have subsided. We're still going to have some rain around, especially kind of that second wave coming in from I-75 in the Valdosta area. That will begin to continue to move eastward, but most of the rain and storm activity really going to begin to fizzle out. And I really do think rain chances are pretty much over by about midnight tonight. So overnight, things will begin to dry out, but tomorrow, another pretty good chance for storms. Now, I am not expecting as much of an all-day event. The storms today, they started right around about 12:30, 1 o'clock, coming in from the southwest, and now we've continued to still see rain for at least the last 4 to 5 hours. Tomorrow's going to be a different story. First half of your day, looking pretty dry, partly to mostly cloudy skies even, maybe a few isolated stray showers here or there, but by the late afternoon and then continuing through your evening hours, there will be almost like a wave of energy coming out of the west that will collide with that sea breeze by, I would say, 3 o'clock at the earliest, but more than likely by 4, 5, 6 o'clock. I think that 4 to 6 o'clock window, storms are really going to fire up, again, right over that sea breeze, which is more than likely going to be situated right around that I-95 corridor. So that's going to just lead to another round and chance for some strong, thunderstorms and heavy rainfall in and around the Jacksonville metro area tomorrow evening. So because of that, we are going to be issuing another weather impact alert for your Monday as well. I've got it timed out between 2 and 8 o'clock because I do think we could see a few isolated storms as early as 2. But really, if you're thinking of a time frame between 4 and 6 or 4 and 7 o'clock even for your best chance to see some heavy rainfall tomorrow. So for the evening commute tomorrow night, for those folks or for those kids really who are going to have their practices, I know kids aren't necessarily back in school yet, but they're already, into their fall sports. Whether 2 days have begun or not, if you have a afternoon or especially an evening practice, between 6 and 8 or 5 and 7, whatever it is, evening practices tomorrow certainly going to be impacted. Your evening commute home also going to be impacted. So heavy rain going to be on the way. And because of how much rain we have seen here now over about the last, day and a half or almost 2 days, The ground itself is very soggy. I know when I left my home to come into work today, there were already some big puddles just kind of along the roadway, and I know we didn't really get that much rain yesterday. So I can only imagine the locations, like out in Baker County and Glen St. Mary or up near Brunswick, who have seen 2 to 3 inches and, got more rain on top of that today. Any additional rainfall tomorrow just going to lend to that potential for more, or for the potential for flooding just in general. I know we haven't had much flooding per se. We've had flood advisories. But nonetheless, that's just going to increase our chance for, extra ponding, better chance for flooding either on the roadways and ponding and things of that nature, or just in, flood-prone areas. Things aren't going to drain very quickly. We already have some standing water out there, and unfortunately, I think that's just going to worsen as you head into your Monday. So here is exactly what I'm talking about. We'll time it out. First half of your day, as I mentioned, should be all right. So from 9, 10, 11 a.m., maybe a few isolated showers around, but otherwise partly cloudy. It's going to be very humid, temperatures in the mid-80s. Then once you get after lunchtime, as I had said, early afternoon, we might just see less than a half dozen, probably even more so, like 2 to 3 just isolated showers trying to pop up. But as I play it out here, we get more so into the late afternoon hours. You'll notice, there it is, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, that sea breeze collision occurring right around the I-95 corridor at I would say the furthest west point, Highway 17, so just on the other side of the St. Johns River, on the western banks of the St. Johns. Storms will begin to initialize and develop, and then these are just going to grow and intensify and gradually spread eastward as the evening wears on. Now, this model brings up some extra storms from the south. We'll see if that occurs, but because of this, we are thinking, by at least your, commute home from work tomorrow, and through your dinner time hour and up into about sunset, we've got a pretty good chance for some rain and thunderstorms. We'll have to kind of play it by ear. We've only got the weather impact alert for tonight and tomorrow evening, but we could have to issue more of them this week. Right now, I'm keeping us at about 60% chance of rain for Tuesday and beyond. And of course, if you stick with us a lot, our threshold for the weather impact is typically a 70% coverage area for rain and storms or more. As we get closer to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we may have to issue more of these simply because the tropical moisture itself is staying in place. The stalled boundary that we had pretty much draped across southeast Georgia now the last 2 days, although it's going to weaken, it's still going to be around. There's still going to be plenty of moisture for storms to develop. So we're keeping it just below weather impact threshold for Tuesday and Wednesday, but nonetheless, still going to be very humid. Temperatures in the low to mid 90s. Real field temperatures anywhere from about 100 to 105, really closer to about that 105 mark, until the afternoon and early evening thunderstorms roll on in. So there's not going to be necessarily a whole lot of variety to the forecast this week. What the variety will be is who happens to see those storms. More than likely, you're probably not going to see a thunderstorm at the same time every day in the same location. So that will change, but I am thinking, about 60% of us do see some level of rain and storms nearly every single day this week. Perhaps by next Sunday, so this time next weekend, we might have a slight, dip down and decrease in overall rain coverage, but overall it's going to be a pretty stormy pattern here over at least the next, 5 to 6 days. So that's kind of part of the forecast, but of course this is also very much tied into what is happening in the tropics, and the National Hurricane Center has been very, very busy today. So 3 separate areas that the National Hurricane Center and ourselves here are watching and monitoring. We're going to try to take it, not storm by storm, but wave by wave, so to speak, or area that they are watching. So the first of which, you got that red blob up just off the coast of North Carolina. You can see it there, 70% chance of development over the next 48 hours, and also a 70% high chance of development over the next 7 days. So looking very, very likely that this becomes our next named storm, which would be Dexter. Good news, this is going to continue to move off to the northeast, will not be, any impact to us. There is a secondary area of just general low pressure that is off to the southwest of there. So that little yellow blob, a 0% chance of development in the next 2 days, but there is a 20% chance in the next 7. I think this will be the more interesting system potentially. Some of the longer range models do show it intensifying right over the Gulf Stream and then moving off to the northeast perhaps by late this upcoming week and even into next weekend. So I don't think, I know it will be of no impact to us here on the First Coast, but some models do show the potential, for this thing to maybe track if something develops. Let me preface it with that. If something happens to develop, could track right up along the eastern seaboard, kind of skirt along the Outer Banks and get, pretty snug and close to Ocean City, Maryland, Dewey, Delaware, New Jersey, Atlantic City. I mean, we'll see if something develops, where it actually goes, but I think the yellow blob is perhaps a better area to watch. And then our third one, well out in the Atlantic. This is all based off of a tropical wave moving off of West Africa. Currently a 0% chance of development in the next 2 days, but a 40% chance in the next 7. So that is certainly going to be a much more of a longer range forecast that we're watching. So let's kind of take a closer look at each of these, break them down a little bit more, why they have increased that one area just off the coast of North Carolina to a high risk. Well, the circulation itself has tightened up pretty substantially here over the past day. Now, the western side of that blob, there's some drier air there, not much convection. Whereas on the eastern side of that circulation, much more thunderstorm activity. And that's why, it just is beginning to look a little bit more wrapped up, a little bit more defined. Hence why they've put that 70% chance of tropical development on it. But as I mentioned, that's going to move off to the northeast. Just to the southwest of there, kind of in between the First Coast and where that big red blob is, just kind of a cluster of some convection. That's going to be that second area that I mentioned could be more interesting, at least for folks who live along the eastern seaboard. But as of right now, not a whole lot being shown from that. And here's kind of another way to look at it based on futurecast of what's going to come for at least the next couple of days. So this stalled boundary that we have right over us, this is connected to that red blob off the coast of North Carolina. And you'll notice by this time tomorrow and into Tuesday, that continues to move off to the northeast. A fish storm, no concern to us. Then, as some models try to depict, another coastal low, area of low pressure tries to form right along that stalled boundary, just off to the southwest of that first low, and is likely to just kind of meander around out there through at least the first half of this week. It won't really be until this upcoming Thursday and Friday, and perhaps even into next weekend, that we will see, okay, does this thing start to strengthen? Does it start to tighten up a little bit and move northward? There's really, I think, two things to kind of watch for here. First of which is the upper level flow itself, where these storms going to be steered, and then the wind shear in this part. Because remember, both of those areas of low pressure are sitting right over the Gulf Stream. So there are some incredibly warm ocean waters for these storms to feed off of, pretty much, right underneath them. Through the first half of this week, a lot of wind shear off to the north. So from North Carolina up to Pennsylvania and extending due east from there, a lot of wind shear. But the overall upper level flow, so the jet stream, is moving to the northeast. That's why it's going to pull that storm, that first red blob, that high chance of development area, off to the northeast. Now, as you get into Tuesday, into Wednesday, it's a little bit more of a northerly direction heading in that direction. And there's a pretty nice area of high pressure aloft. So upper level divergence right over top of where that low pressure system could be. So what does that typically mean? Well, at the surface, obviously you want the low, but aloft in the atmosphere, 30, 40,000 feet, what you want to see is actual high pressure aloft. So low pressure at the surface, high pressure aloft, that leads to upper level divergence. It allows the thunderstorm or the tropical system to grow in vertical development, and a storm could then become produced. So there are hints that a fairly potent upper level low, or an upper level high, could form over this area that might lead to further development as we get into the latter part of this coming week. So I know that was probably a lot kind of scientific keys to just know here locally. Neither of those are going to impact us. We're still going to just have that stalled boundary over us, keeping the rain and thunderstorms around. The third area then, remember there was 3 of them. This currently has a 40% chance of development over the next 7 days, and it's right in that little yellow circled area that I have. Doesn't really look like a lot. I know that. It's really just a very small cluster of storms that certainly don't look all that ominous or eerie in any way. But you'll notice here as we played out through most of this upcoming week and into the end of the week, it just kind of shows a slight uptick in moisture convergence there, and you can kind of start to see that swirl and that tightening up just a hair, that kind of bend in those yellow bars as it moves into the North Atlantic. So more than likely, this is going to turn north if something develops, and won't be a big concern. Some long-range models show this turning into a true named system. Others keep it fairly weak. I'm kind of leaning towards it will more than likely stay rather weak and may not develop simply because of this. There's still a big plume of Saharan dust coming off of West Africa and the Saharan desert. So if it's able to squeak out ahead of all that dust before the end of the week arrives, then the storm might be able to develop. So right on the western edge where that pink is, if it just gets around there, okay, then we could see a storm. But again, it'll more than likely be turning northward and will not be a concern to us. But if all that dry air and Saharan dust moves westward, certainly going to inhibit any sort of tropical development from that system. So again, key takeaways there. There are 3 areas that the National Hurricane Center is watching. One of them has a good chance to become Dexter, over the next 2 days. We'll see if that occurs. Certainly could either tonight or, into tomorrow morning. But whether Dexter forms or not will not be impacting us. That is just going to move off to the northeast and won't really impact anyone on the eastern seaboard of the U.S. That second area to the southwest of there could be more interesting, but that would be by the end of this upcoming week. And a similar story for that storm down towards that intertropical convergence zone closer to Africa. Yet again, it's going to be late this coming week into next weekend. And none of the 3 appear to be, a threat to the U.S. or a threat to the First Coast, specifically, or to Florida or Georgia in general. So otherwise, still some rain and thunderstorms out there this evening. We're going to start it right back up again tomorrow. First half of the day is looking good. Weather impact alert's going to run from 2 until 8 o'clock for Monday afternoon and evening, but really best chance to see heavy rain and strong thunderstorms around the Jacksonville metro is going to be between about 3 and 7 p.m. tomorrow afternoon and evening. Through the rest of the week then, although that stalled front is going to weaken, we're still just going to have plenty of tropical moisture in place, so pretty much daily chances for rain and thunderstorms nearly every single day here on the 7-day. Temperatures staying pretty steady in the low to mid 90s. I will note, I think by Thursday and Friday and Saturday, so Tuesday and Wednesday, kind of group those together. I think storms will primarily be around the metro. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, looks like most of the storms will begin to work their way a little bit further inland. So we may have isolated to scattered storms around the I-95 corridor and Jax to start off in the, early to middle part of the afternoon. But by the late afternoon and early evening, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I think most of those storms will begin to work inland and westward closer to I-75. So again, just based on this, might not look like a whole lot of variety, but we're going to try to pick it apart as best we can here and give you the most detail that we possibly can. But otherwise, I think that was probably a lot of information to try to take in. I feel like I just said a lot. Hopefully some of that made sense to you. But still some rain around out there this evening around the metro. Stronger storms, though, still up across southeast Georgia. We'll be tracking them on First Coast News at 6 on NBC and ABC, so hopefully you can tune in then. But otherwise, I am meteorologist Ross Mumal. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, and good night, folks.